Loving kindness or compassion really transforms our default story. That narrative that tends to rush right in, be our immediate response, be the habitual reaction, it actually shifts and transforms. Some of those stories are very positive. They really do bring us together and open up our field of aspiration, but many are quite negative. It's about our own limitation. It's about others having nothing to do with us, stories of alienation, of aloneness, of condemnation. And these shift, they change powerfully through the practice of loving kindness, through the experience of loving kindness. Here's an example of a kind of negative story. A friend of mine once rented a house for many of us to do a retreat in on Martha's Vineyard, and when I went into the bedroom that had been set aside for me, I saw a certain cartoon had been left on the desk, and it was a cartoon from the Peanuts comic strip. In the first frame of the cartoon, Lucy is talking to Charlie Brown, and she says, "You know, Charlie Brown, what your problem is? The problem with you is that you're you." Then in the second frame of the cartoon, poor Charlie Brown responds and says, "Well, what in the world can I do about that?" Then in the third and final frame, Lucy, being Lucy, says, "I don't pretend to be able to give advice, I merely point out the problem." And somehow, whenever I was walking by that desk, my eye would fall right in that line. The problem with you is that you're you. Because that was a very familiar story. It was a very familiar voice within myself. Probably the most pronounced voice, that Lucy voice, until I went to India and began my life of meditation. And very often, that's what rushes in over and over again. The sense that if I really knew who I were, if other people really knew who I were, if I really knew who I was, or other people really knew who I was, it would be a pretty bleak story. That would be a big problem. As we practice loving kindness and compassion, that story shifts to be one of inclusion rather than exclusion, kindness rather than condemnation. And we find that we are like a different person, quite naturally, quite beautifully. Sometimes people don't like the idea of loving kindness meditation. It sounds like something phony or false that we're going to superimpose this kind of veneer of niceness and sweetness on top of maybe some roiling, conflicted, difficult emotions, but really it's not like that at all. The practice of loving kindness is like shifting our attention so that we're actually taking some risks with our attention. It's a pretty bold process of experimentation. So for example, if we're accustomed at night to looking back at ourselves during the day, almost as though to assess or evaluate, like, how did I do today? And let's just say that we're in the habit of pretty well only remembering or even obsessing about the things we did wrong and the mistakes that we made and what we didn't say quite right. Almost to the extent that our whole sense of who we are and all that we will ever be collapses around that comment we made at lunch at that meeting, say. If we practice loving kindness, it's almost as though asking ourselves, anything else happened today? Like anything good? But it's not phony or make-believe. It's not like insisting, oh, wasn't that a brilliant and witty thing I said at lunch at that meeting? Maybe it was really kind of stupid, and there are consequences for that. But that's not all that we are, ever. So it's that collapse, that narrowness, that fixation. That's what we're challenging, because there's a bigger picture of reality. And our ability to expand our sense will come from the process of loving kindness. Anything good happened today? Any good within me? It's an intentional act, because left to just the force of habit, we will stay stuck in some narrow rut of judgment. But it can be intentional without being false or phony. We're experimenting. What's it like to try to include all those other aspects of myself rather than just stay confined to that kind of perspective I'm the idiot who made that mistake. What's it like with others? When we might have the habit, we probably do have the habit of creating a kind of other, not even necessarily through prejudice or bias or rage, but just indifference. How many beings do we look right through? Do we overlook? Do we ignore? Because they don't count in some way for us. How many people play a role or fulfill a function in our lives that we objectify so that they might as well be a piece of furniture? And what happens when we include them rather than exclude them? That's the process of loving kindness. It's stretching our attention in a true way, a way that will reflect what is actually a fundamental truth of life, which is that we live in an interdependent universe. That however alone we might feel or disconnected we might feel, the actual truth is that we live in a world of connection. That's the very fabric of life. And so as we make that stretch, as we experiment, as we begin to include rather than exclude, we're coming closer and closer to that fundamental reality. And that's why the practice of loving kindness is powerful. It actually reflects a greater reality about how things are. So we begin to look at that dry cleaner or the checkout person in the grocery store, and we pay full and open attention to them, wishing them well. That's the process. I was once teaching in Washington, D.C., and it was an elementary school that had been rented as a facility for the day long, the weekend. And all along the corridors, the walls of the school, they had put up the particular school's rules of kindness, which we all loved. And the bell would ring, and then we'd go out and stand there and read the rules of kindness. It was really tremendous. And the rules of kindness for the elementary school were things like respect everyone on the inside and on the outside, things like that. But my very favorite rule of kindness was everybody gets to play. Everybody gets to play. And that, I think, is really the sensibility of loving kindness and compassion. Not that we like everybody, not that we approve of everybody, not that we're going to bring everyone home with us or give them all our money or whatever it might be, but it's that deep recognition everybody should get to play. Everybody counts. Everybody matters. We say that the practice of loving kindness is something that transfigures the world of our motivation, our intention, so that it may not determine what we'll do in a particular situation. There's no formula, like a loving person will behave in precisely this way in this circumstance, but it will transform why we do things, where we're coming from, what our worldview is, what our sense of connection or disconnection is, so that as we make a choice about how to respond in a particular moment, a particular context, a particular situation, we find we are coming from a very, very different place. Loving kindness is the deep acknowledgement of the connection that actually exists between each of us. It's born of a realization that everybody wants to be happy. All beings want to be happy. No matter who we are or what we do, somewhere in there is that wishing to be a part of something greater than our normally limited sense of who we are, to have a sense of belonging. And that urge toward happiness gets twisted and distorted through the force of ignorance. It's like so often we do not have a clue as to what will actually make us happy. And we see that in life so many times with great poignancy, that people, maybe somebody we know says they're really lonely, but we watch them as they speak to somebody or the way they behave and how off-putting they are, how much hostility they put out, and you think, wow, maybe that desire to connect is really sincere, but look at how it's coming out and how the result is going to be so different from what you say you want. Well, we're all like that at different times. So the problem is not the urge toward happiness. The problem is ignorance, it's confusion, it's getting lost. The urge toward happiness, our own and others, is not something to feel squeamish about or weird about in some way. We should actually celebrate it and try as much as possible to combine it with wisdom, with understanding, rather than with ignorance. Then it becomes like a homing instinct for freedom, and we can cut through many obstacles. So the underlying principle is a feeling that I deserve to be happy, and so do all beings. This is rightful. This is appropriate. The other side of that, of course, is that happiness does not mean just the experience of pleasure. It needs to mean something much deeper than that, because compassion is born of the understanding of how vulnerable we all are, that life changes all of the time. We have pleasure and we have pain. Life can change on a dime so quickly. There's transition, there's upheaval. Something happens that we don't want. And we share that as well. Compassion doesn't mean feeling separate, almost as though saying, well, I, whose life is perfect, I'm so intact way over here, and you, way over there, kind of way down below, are struggling because everything's fallen apart for you, and that could never, ever happen for me. It's not like that. Even as we don't, in reality, of course, share the same measure of pain, it's not exactly the same. We do share vulnerability and the nature of life being change. And so we feel for one another. We have that kind of resonance, that recognition, and we want to come close to others, seeing if we can be of service, seeing if we can help, seeing if we can offer. And we cannot always, and this brings in another element of understanding, which is equanimity, that we're present, we try, we care, and we also understand we're not in control of the unfolding of events, that it's not our universe to determine. The practices of loving kindness and compassion are like practices of generosity. And we all know the difference in terms of material generosity of different kinds of gift giving. Sometimes we offer someone a gift, and it's really a freely given gift. Sometimes we offer someone a gift, and there are all kinds of strings attached, like, thank me, would you? Or, love this gift, love it more than you've ever loved anything ever before, or whatever it might be. We practice loving kindness and compassion on the bedrock of equanimity or wisdom, which allows our generosity of the spirit, may you be happy, may you be peaceful, truly to be freely given gifts. And then the last element, we have loving kindness, compassion, equanimity. The last element is a state that's known as sympathetic joy. Sympathetic joy means joy in the happiness of others. Rather than witnessing someone's success or good fortune and falling sway to the voice which so commonly says, ooh, I wish you didn't have so much going for you right now. Like, you don't have to lose everything, but if the light could just dim a bit, I'd feel better about myself. In sympathetic joy, we actually feel happy for someone else's happiness. It doesn't feel like something's been taken away from us, that we've been ripped off in some fashion. We see someone enjoying something, we feel good. We have loving kindness, that understanding of our deep, deep connection to one another. We have compassion, the movement of our hearts in response to seeing someone's pain or suffering, because we understand how we are all vulnerable. We have sympathetic joy, the ability to feel delight in someone's happiness, because we realize nothing's been taken away from us because someone else is happy. And we have equanimity, which is really underneath all of these. Equanimity is the voice of wisdom. It's the articulation of wisdom in the form of balance that says, For example, I will try to do everything I can to make this a better situation for you, and I'm not in control. I can't make your decisions for you. There needs to be a kind of peace within, even as we try, even as we express compassion, even as we express loving kindness, even as we express sympathetic joy. So even though we talk about loving kindness as being its own method of meditation, and it is, it's very much based on the evolution of wisdom, which comes through clear seeing, which comes through practicing mindfulness. Even though all four of these states, actually, loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity, can be practiced as distinct methods, more commonly we bring all four of them together through the practice of loving kindness meditation. There's always equanimity there, or it wouldn't actually be loving kindness, it would be something else, like very conditional, full of expectation. And we can also make an effort to include compassion and sympathetic joy in terms of whom we might choose to be the recipient of the loving kindness. And so we're going to bring all four together through this one method, and we'll practice a little bit now. You can sit comfortably, close your eyes or not. In this method of meditation, rather than centering our attention on the feeling of the breath, we center our attention on the silent repetition of certain phrases. The phrases are like an offering. They're the expression of the heart. Being words, they will tend to be imperfect, but that's okay. The first recipient of loving kindness is ourselves. So if you can think of 3 or 4 phrases that could convey that kind of well-wishing to yourself. Common phrases are things like, may I be safe, be happy, be healthy, live with ease. May I be safe, be happy, be healthy, live with ease. This last phrase, may I live with ease, means the things of day-to-day life, like livelihood and family, may it not be such a struggle. May I live with ease. You can use these phrases or other phrases that make sense to you, and simply repeat them over and over again with enough space and enough silence so that it's a rhythm that's pleasing to you. This is like the song of the heart. May I be safe, be happy, be healthy, live with ease. And here the skill set is just the same. You may find your attention wandering, you go to the past, you go to the future. It's okay. You realize you've been distracted, you've gone away. Gently let go and come back. See if you can call to mind a friend. We'll start with a friend who's doing pretty well right now. They may not be perfectly happy, but at least in some arena of life, they're enjoying success or good fortune. So if someone like that comes to mind, bring them here. You can get an image of them, say their name to yourself, get a feeling for their presence, and offer the phrases of loving kindness to them. Just the same phrases you've offered to yourself. May you be safe, be happy, be healthy, live with ease, or whatever phrases they might be. And then a friend who's having a difficult time right now, bring them here. See what happens as you offer the phrases of loving kindness to them. And then all beings everywhere, all people, all creatures, all those in existence, near and far, known and unknown. May all beings be safe, be happy, be healthy, live with ease. And when you feel ready, you can open your eyes. See if you can bring some of this energy and sense of connection into your day.